Now, if you just really started watching our channel here at the Fourth and Long, you would kind of think that we're mostly a footy channel because that's what it seems all we've been putting out recently. But nope, we're all sports. But I just love footy so much, like gone head over heels into this. So what better way to dive into it than just start pumping out shows? But today I'm joined by the lovely chaps down at the Cobracast podcast. They've been so generous to reach out to Twitter. We've been able to finally get a show together. Mates, it's a pleasure to have you here. You mind just introducing yourselves real quick?
Nah, thanks for having us, mate. We appreciate being here. So I'm Ricky Dog Ettridge. I'm the VP of the Cobracast.
Yep, no, I'm Ricky Rifty Logan, president of the Sandown Cobras and host of the Cobracast.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you on board. We're recording this little evening in the States, but over in your side of the world, it's just about midday. So that I feel like that's the
Yeah,
hardest
not,
part,
not
trying
not
to
quite
get
midday yet.
not quite. It's getting close, but that was one of the funniest things, just trying to like get the whole days together. That's probably the biggest challenge as an American viewer fan of the AFL is either do I stay up super late at night and catch the 12 a.m. game, or do I just wake up really early around 3 or 4 a.m. and watch one of the earlier ones?
As a fan of the soccer in England, I understand that pain, and it's 2 a.m. kickoffs, and you're sort of sitting there going, "Do I? Don't I?" And then you do, and normally within half an hour, you're 3-0 down, you're back in bed. So
Exactly. And that was like when I was struggling to try and watch my Oakland A's last baseball season playing in Tokyo Star. If I was waking up at 2:30, figure I'd catch a game, they go down 4 runs, and like, nah, I'm back to sleep. It is.
and then normally you wake back up and they've pulled a comeback off, and you're absolutely shattered. You've missed it.
It happens without fail every single time. It's the struggles of being a sports fan. But I want to kick things off by kind of just going over your fellows' background in footy. When we were talking DMs, you're talking about being a part of the local Melbourne footy team. You mind talking about that a bit?
Yep, so we both play and are on the committee for the Sandown Cobras. It's a little club in the southeast of Melbourne, Victoria. So our club's been around for 58 years now, going on, yeah, getting ready to, already starting our plans for our 60-year anniversary. But
Wow.
yeah, I came to the club, I think the same year as Ed Dog in 2009. It was actually my first time playing Aussie rules for a club. I didn't play it growing up. My dad played it. I watched a lot of footy, but I hadn't actually played footy growing up much. Just a couple school games here and there. I actually played gridiron American football as a junior, so from 17 to 19, I played that. Um, and yeah, I sort of hadn't really considered playing Aussie rules, but my dad's good mate was the coach at the time, and um, invited me down. Me and my brother said, come down. We're starting up this extra team because we've got so many players. So we're going to have three teams. So sort of the thirds team is a bit more of a social sort of game. You don't really have to take it too serious. So
Mm-hmm.
that suits me. I don't like taking anything too serious. So yeah, headed down for a kick and happened to run into some guys that I'd actually played gridiron with the year before. Um, and they're like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" We're all, yeah. So we all sort of, a few of us that knew each other from other sports had turned up to play footy for. They had other mates bring them down from somewhere else, and so yeah, we came down, played a game together. We all had a blast, and 11 years later, all us guys that came down that day are pretty much still around at the club now.
Dang,
So it's been a good 11 years.
that's super cool, man.
Yeah, so as Rifty said, I come down to the club in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I started playing footy when I was about 8 years old, so pretty much from 8 up to 18, I was playing juniors and underage football, and then I finished my under 18s, and that's where you sort of shift from junior club to a senior club. And I decided I wanted to sort of leave where I was because I wasn't enjoying being around that much. So I knew the captain at Sandown, so he sort of told me to come down for a training session, and that was probably late. That would have been late 2008. Yeah, late 2008, ready for the 2009 season. And yeah, as Rifty said, I've been there ever since, and ended up was playing my first few years, the senior level and reserves level, and was enjoying it. And
Mm-hmm.
then sort of got to the point where I wanted a bit more, just play footy socially and sit on the sidelines and drink beer and hell abuse. And bloke, I took half a year off, and the bloke that was the thirds coach that year rang me up and asked me to come back. And been there ever since, playing thirds at 9:30 on the beers by 12, getting stuck into the reses and seniors players and well and truly, a bit drunk by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, ready for the night to go.
I feel like that's the way to go. Almost like some beer leagues over here, and little softball leagues, and some hockey leagues, and get little beer league footy leagues over there. It sounds like a blast. And then
you take it serious on your training on your Tuesdays and Thursdays, and from the time you rock up on game day, you take it seriously. And then as soon as that game's finished, then it's all bets off and get into the piss, I say.
I love that. And then more specifically with your podcast as well, the Cobracast. What about that? Like, when did you guys get that started, and how does that work for us?
So we actually probably started recording maybe start of April. We'll sort of, obviously with COVID hit, our season, our training got put on hold, and we were trying to find ways to sort of stay engaged in our community and our club. And we decided, well, instead of last year, we started doing like player profiles. So we'd put a picture up and put some information about the player, and we thought, let's sort of change it up and start going digital and do video. So we started just interviewing players, and then West Lothian Eagles in Scotland, Instagram exchange come through from them just via something else. And I said to Rifty, I'm like, we should reach out to them, see if they want to jump on. And so we spoke to West Lothian from Scotland, and then it was like, there might be a few other clubs here that might want to jump on and chat about footy around the world. And what are we now? August, and I think we've recorded like 60 clubs in 26 countries or something tonight. So it's just sort of snowballed, and I don't even know how West Lothian come across us in the first place. Do you remember, Rifty?
Yeah, so we started being a lot more active on our socials. We started a campaign right at the start of lockdown where Dog headed up, which was the Nothing's Better Than Playing at Home campaign, where it was just messages from all clubs around Victoria just to their communities, just saying, make sure you follow the guidelines for staying at home and social distancing and all that stuff. And so we did that campaign, and that actually just skyrocketed when we posted the video. We got like almost 100,000 views, and it just blew up. And so that sort of got our social medias a lot more recognized and stuff. And West Lothian, it just happened to follow us on Instagram after that, and they saw a picture of our new training singlet, and he reached out and said, is there any chance I could get a training singlet? And I'm like, yeah, well, sure, let's send him one, and why not get him on the podcast as well? So that's how it sort of all happened, and he loved it. He jumped on, and then like Ed Dog said, we kept reaching out to clubs and thinking Ed Dog would say, I'll reach out to 10 clubs. If 2 get back to me, we'll be right. And all 10 would get back to him.
We've done 4. I think we've done 4. I think what we had done, or 4 or 5 we had done, and it was like, sweet, we've done our little Around the Globe series, we're good now. And then clubs that I'd messaged that hadn't heard back from for 2 weeks, for all of a sudden getting back to me going, hey, yeah, let's do it, we're keen. And it was like, oh shit, all right, well, okay, now we need to work this out. And I think one weekend we done 4 in a weekend, and we're just like, oh geez, that's 4 in a weekend is probably, we're probably starting to push it a bit now. That's a fair bit. Fast forward 2 months, and we're banging out 8 or 9 on the weekend just to get them done. So because the goal is, because my wife gave birth about a month ago. So
well, congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're expecting our footy season to get back, my wife to give birth. So we're like, we're not going to have time to sit in front of a screen for hours on end. So let's just try and get as many recorded as we can, so that way we've got a couple months worth of recordings. Done that, things started to look good, and then obviously Melbourne's second wave of COVID hit, and it was just sort of like, well, we might as well just keep doing it, mate. Might as well just keep getting them recorded. So I think we've got up to, end of October, pretty much recorded by now. Dang. So yeah, it's been good fun though, that's for sure. Things that we've learned to, we honestly didn't realise there was that much footy being played around the world. So,
well, see, it's funny you mentioned that, because up until I think it was maybe 4 months ago, I hardly knew what the AFL was. Like, I've heard about it. Please don't hit me when I say this. I assumed it was some sort of more Australian version of rugby. So I spoke to him when we had Donnie Hess on the show for the first time. I admitted that, and then I was cleansed of my sins at that point from him. So I heard
Yeah.
it's not rugby, not rugby.
You
And
definitely got a man that's in Donny, a bloke that's very informative and knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
We spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and his episode about the Des Moines Roosters is coming out in a couple of weeks, and I think we jumped off the chat. We spoke footy with him for an hour and a half, and it was he's definitely to have a bloke that he knows. You've got him as your correspondent, and you've
Oh
got
yeah.
a really good bloke that knows what he's talking about, knows the ins and outs of footy. So you've done well in getting him on board.
Oh, thank you. I'm super lucky to have that happen. Really, the only reason this whole thing even started, like my whole kind of show into footy, is because I just put out a tweet. I quote tweeted, like I think it was the AFL Twitter account put out a tweet. I think it was of Specky Mark, and I just quote tweeted saying something along the lines of AFL is the most underrated sport in the world, and that caught a little fire. And then USAFL, and then Coach Johnny running the Roosters account hit me up. Then it just kind of snowballed, and I am extremely lucky that I put out that tweet because I've been having a blast with this sport, whether it be the few times I'm able to watch it live or just watching the highlights every single time. Man, it's one hell of a sport. I'm sorry to even get my friends kind of hooked on it too. So it's infectious. It really is.
And that's when we speak into all these clubs around the world. Um, the one thing that they all have in common is they've got down to training or they've watched the game and then they've just fallen for it hard. Like it's their footy mad, but none more so than Donny. Like he, compared to all the other guys we spoke to around the world, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't really get to watch that many games. I don't,
He's all
you know.
in.
But he's like, man, he's talking about stuff we're like, shit, I don't know, like. I'm not up to date with that. What's going on? Like, yeah. So he lives and breathes it probably more so than we do.
And that's saying
crazy.
something, right? Because especially being an American, I mean, that time zone difference makes it so hard. But that man, Coach Hess, is a dedicated mother. He's insane, and I was trying to kind of get into it the way he was. I'm having a hard time trying to keep up with him. That man's a beast. And then, yeah, no, I'm super lucky to have him. Shout out to Coach Johnny Hess, official fourth and long AFL correspondent. So it's one hell of a title. Not very many people hold that title in our ranks. But now let's talk a little more about the actual sport of footy. That's why we're here, right, gentlemen? So I've kind of given my 2 cents when I've talking to Donnie, when I've talking to Mr. Brian Barish. And now I want to hear from you guys because I love hearing the opinions from everyone about sports like this. One of my favorite questions to ask people about if they're fans of any sport is what makes it so entertaining and fun, and like what about the sport keeps you coming back for more?
Well, being somebody that's played American football as well, so I can sort of come at it from a bit more of an American angle where footy is just non-stop from the first bounce to the last whistle. It's non-stop. There's no stop start. There's like I love NFL, but it is way too stop start.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
playing it compared to watching it, like even playing it, it moves a lot faster. It's know, especially at our amateur level, where keep the game going.
Oh yeah.
But there's no, if you're on the bench, you're on the bench for a few minutes to catch a breather, or if the coach has cracked the shits at you and dragged you, you're sitting on the bench for a while. But for American football, you spend half a game on the bench, and if you're not in the starting lineup, you might spend 90% of the game on the bench if you're playing special teams. So it's a non-stop. It's just go go go. It's excitement all the time. There's always something happening, and it's a 360-degree game. The ball could be anywhere at any time. You could get hit from anywhere at any time. A guy can jump on your head from anywhere at any time. Like it's 360 degrees. You just always, it's unlike rugby, unlike gridiron where it's all in front of you. You see the guys coming at you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Footy, it's all around. It's, I've had many times where you're sort of watching the ball in the air and then all of a sudden you're on your back going, shit, like, isn't that a free kick? Come on, like.
I can't really add much more to Rifty. Like watching the game, like from a club perspective, playing the game of sport, it's just the mateship that it keeps you coming back and makes you love the game because every Saturday you get to run out there with 22 of your best mates, and that's what down in Australia we've got a very club mentality, and you have a lot of blokes in Australia, which I'm sure you will find out in your travels, that especially in Melbourne anyway, that chase money. So down in Melbourne, local footy players can get paid, and blokes will chase, whatever club's going to pay them the most money, they're going to go to. We don't pay, so we've got a big disadvantage at that point because we don't pay players. But what we do get, we've got 30 blokes in our list, 30 blokes in our list that are all best mates. Like you'll see them, if you see them on a Tuesday and a Thursday and a Saturday, you then get on the beers with them on a Saturday night. You might, the boys will go down and watch UFC at Sandown Park Hotel on a Sunday. It's just that mateship that keeps everyone coming together. And personally, for me, what makes the game so fun is kicking goals.
Nothing like scoring, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
And then I love both of your points make. Like Rifty, to your effective at just being a constant movement. Yeah, no, especially as a former football player, it feels super quick when you're playing. But when you're watching, man, I feel like some games, it's like I'm watching a baseball game sometimes. Love baseball too, but I'm sorry, sometimes those games go way too long. And then the camaraderie about it, that's probably the best part about playing a sport, really. That's probably the thing I missed the most was just, the brotherhood. Especially, nothing better than the feeling of like you and your teammates going out to battle every week, right?
Yeah.
It's really what it is.
Yeah.
You mentioned the slowness of the game. That is, we grew up watching footy in the 90s and the early 2000s where it was just gung-ho. It was quick. There was none of this zone defense. It was one-on-one all around the ground. But because now the footy has shifted to more of a zone defense and more of a flooding. Back in the day, I think in year 2000, the way the game is being played now, the first coach that ever done that was crucified for playing the game that way. And now it's just sort of shifted to that, which makes the game a little bit slower. But as you will say, when a team uses the corridor or goes quick, it is so much fun to watch. And 9 times out of 10 they actually score compared to I'm not too sure if you watched last night's game, but Gold Coast were chipping the ball around the first quarter, didn't score.
Yeah.
I walked out the room for 10 minutes, come back, and nothing had happened. And that is, it can be slow, but then you get the games that are fast paced. The Richmond put out their game the other week, perfect example, just hard hitting footy. It's nothing better than when that's teams are moving the ball quick and they're flying.
Yeah, Gold Coast was kind of weird because it's not like they were just around midfield too. They were in the 50 and they were just kind of chipping around. It was, compared to most of the stuff I've seen recently, like about my 3 weeks worth of really watching this stuff, I was kind of confused by their tactics. I was like, I see most teams, if they get a chance, they just kind of, if they get any sort of window, I see a lot of players just try to put it through the uprights, and then Gold Coast are just kind of taking their time on it.
Yeah, well, this season's unlike no other season. You've got
course.
clubs that are stuck in isolation, in bubbles, playing in grounds they're not used to playing at, and they're doing it on short turnaround. So Gold Coast came off a 4-day turnaround, and they're playing up in the top end, which it was like 30 degrees at night still, and the humidity it's like being on a tropical island. It's that high humidity.
30 degrees Celsius. So for my audience, it's hot. It's hot.
Yeah. It's hot. It's wet because it's so dewy, and those players that have just come off a 4-day break, then playing in those conditions, you can understand that they're not going to be moving as fast with the players as they usually would, and attacking as hard. Where and Carlton was sort of using it at times, and it's a bit like a boxer. You got some boxers that are counter punches, others that are heavily on the attack, and that's where some teams try and do that sort of counter attack where they're going to sit back, let the other team work themselves into trouble, and then they're going to rebound and attack from defense. So there's a lot of different tactics, and that's sort of something that when you're watching the game for the first time, you're just like, these guys are just crazy. They just run around everywhere like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
But there is a lot of coaching to it. There's a lot of tactics, and not on the same level as NFL, as you can have every single play. There can be different tactics too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still a lot of tactics, and what Atdog said, a lot of teams are playing this sort of flooding style, which back in 2000 that was used to beat a team that was undefeated at the time, and it was like this coach just came up with this perfect game plan to beat this team, and now it's over the last 20 years it's become a very sort of popular tactic to use.
That's really cool. Like I've started been picking up a little bit on like I guess what you call plays and stuff like that, like set designs. It's almost like when I was getting to hockey about 6 years ago. To me, that looked just like chaos. But now I'm starting to see it. You know, same thing with basketball. It looks like chaos, like when you're watching it for the first time. But then you start to see little patterns. I'm sure it's going to take me a little longer to really understand. I guess the coaching and the schemes behind it. But it's part of the fun when you pick up a new sport, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
And now, also another thing I have to ask is like from whether it be from your experience as a fan or experience as an actual player, do you have like a favorite part or memory of the sport?
Oh,
Yeah.
My favourite,
so yeah.
I've got a couple. So
Okay.
I've got supporting my team, playing, and then off field. So supporting my team, I'm a mad Essendon supporter. We were that team in 2000 that were undefeated and got beaten by that flooding tactic.
Oh.
I actually managed to get into the rooms after the grand final win as a 10-year-old and got to hold the Premiership Cup and photos with the great Kevin Sheedy and James Hird and all the players.
Damn.
Yeah, I was sitting on the couch as a 10-year-old, loved my footy. I slept with the footy and my mum's gone to me, all right, Ricky, we're time to leave. I'm going, where are we going? She goes, don't ask questions, get in the car. I'm started 10-year-old, about to watch my beloved Bombers, started crying. I'm like, what are we doing?
Right.
Get in the car and mum goes to me, if you go anywhere right about now, where would it be? I'm like, well, to the MCG. And she's like, see that footy in the back? I'm like, yeah. She goes, we're getting into the rooms after the game. So the goal was, because mum knew somebody that knew Adam Ramanauskas, who was my favourite player, and she could get us into the rooms. So I'm standing there at halftime. That was back in the days, Rifty would know, where people would be outside the MCG with signs, looking for one ticket, looking, we'll $200 for a ticket, give free ticket. And there was a sign on the ground that had, looking for one ticket. And I've just said it out loud. And by halftime, I think Melbourne the game was done. A 70-year-old Melbourne fan walked out and goes to me, are you waiting to get in the game, mate? And I've just sort of froze up. And my mum's gone, yeah, he is. He's giving me the ticket. Enjoy. It was in the end, the AFL members on the wing level. Like, I was 10 years old, so I don't remember bugger all of being there. And yeah, then got into the rooms after the game. So
That's so
I've actually never really thought about it till now, but that's probably my favourite supporting. My favourite on-field moment would be I've won 2 league leading goal kicking awards in my time, and I've chucked them in the backdrop because I realised for a while they weren't in the backdrop of our episodes. So
Golden cleats.
yeah, so the Golden Boots. So I won
Boot.
2 of them in 2012 and 2013, and that was a pretty big deal for me. And my favourite off-field moment would actually be that nothing's better than playing at home campaign that I headed up at the start of the year. That was something that I never thought I'd ever be able to never do, and it was something that I look back on and I'm proud of myself doing it, but even proud of it was our footy club that was at the forefront of something so major and in the Victorian community.
That's a super cool marketing campaign you guys got going. That was really kind of struck a genius on your part.
Yeah, as I've said a few times, it was as we started getting told, don't leave your house, stay home.
Yeah.
And I was out the front working away, and I was seeing people still just walking around. I was on Twitter, and the beaches were flooded, and I'm just like, we've got to do something here, because we want to get back to play footy. So I reached out to a few people on Twitter that I knew from within the Victorian community, and same as the podcast, I was like, we can get 5-10 clubs onto this, and we've done well. And next thing you know, it was 44 clubs from 26 leagues from all around Victoria. So I think it worked. I don't remember how far the distance was between them, but it was like literally every single point in Victoria we got clubs from. So that was something that I'll definitely, even once I finish playing footy, that would be one of my fondest memories and something I'm proud about achieving and doing for the footy club.
100%. Then what about you, Rifty? You got some time to think about this?
Yeah, well, see, I'm a Carlton supporter, so the last quite a while has been pretty hard times following Carlton. I haven't got too many great memories to share, but the last final we played in, where we beat Richmond, is up there as one of the great games of I think it was Nick Dygan just absolutely played a blinder and then decided to retire the year later, which was a shame. But that was, yeah. And 1995, I was young, what, 11 years old,
Mm-hmm.
watching footy with the old man, and Carlton was an absolute powerhouse. And that grand final wasn't much of a competition because we absolutely smashed Geelong. And um, yeah, that was, watching some of the greats of the game that Brownlow medalists
Mm-hmm.
and great players play back then. And I've watched the game a couple of times as an adult, and that team then was something else. So I wish we could have some success like that again in the future.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I'll
right.
get to see some in my time. But playing wise, I don't really have that one standout achievement or award or anything. I think um, we've had great games. We've had some
Mm-hmm.
great times playing with the boys. But one of the when I played my 150th with a group of mates, like it wasn't the best game. We didn't win. We were having a tough year, but getting to play my 150th with a bunch of guys that I didn't even know, you know,
Yeah.
9 years before, 10 years before, and that becoming my best mates was something else. And I got to kick a goal in the last quarter, and give one of my good mates a big hug, and it was a special moment to then get cheered off by the boys for that 150th. So yeah, it's I would have made my 200 if we had played 3 games this year. So I'm hoping my 200th will actually have a win. So yeah,
It's gonna happen. It's 100% gonna happen. I believe it because sooner rather than later, of course, fingers crossed. We might see things a little more back to normal. At least over in Australia, you guys are able to have a decent amount of people in the stands. I know there's some NFL teams talking about like 12, 20% capacity to start off with. Uh, Fingers crossed that works out because it's weird seeing no one in the stands.
yeah. Well, that's why it's been good watching the games where they're taking them up to like the top end and stuff. Places that wouldn't usually get to see footy live, like the game last night, the Carlton Gold Coast game. It's up in the top end, and it's at a place that you know what do they take? They might take a game there once every preseason,
No, I
something
think
like that.
Darwin normally get a game once a year. I think Port
Yeah,
Adelaide
but
and
what do
Melbourne
they
play there.
usually get? Yeah, Port. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
no,
usually get
not,
crappy
not prime
teams.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, so they
Okay.
get they got Gold Coast Carlton Friday night. They're getting the dream time at the T, as they call it. The Richmond Essendon game is going to get played up there. So for those communities up there, those Indigenous communities, getting to see a game that celebrates their culture
Mm-hmm.
live would be amazing. And so yeah, it was great to see a crowd there like that last night, and it'll be even better tonight with the Richmond Essendon game.
That'd be super cool. But speaking on that though, what about some recent AFL news? Then, I this this little kind of officiating call was kind of controversial a number of nights ago. But what about your thoughts on the Carlton Freo game? Given the free kick for Carlton to kick a banger of a goal to win after the buzzer.
But it was
uh,
100% there. It was there. Like it's a free kick every day of the week. I don't know what they're
No,
bitching about.
uh,
of
Like
course, of course.
yeah. I was going to say you sent the video I sent your mate. He was always going to say that,
but
Yeah,
but
it's
I saw a lovely reaction by the way. That was perfect.
but from a from the Essendon fan point of view, the deliberate out of bounds definitely there. He didn't hide it. He's tried to knock it down. 100% there. He down the field. You could argue is rough, but it was a poor attempt to smother. He put himself in that position to give that away. And the thing, myself and Rifty were speaking about this beforehand, and I asked him, would that be getting paid in the first quarter downfield? The answer to that is probably yes. So that should still be getting paid in the last quarter. You'll come to note, there's a notion in Aussie rules that if it was a close game in the last quarter, put the whistle away,
Okay.
which is a load of crap because why should the rules change from the first quarter to the last quarter?
Yeah.
Like down the field, it's a tough call, but the player should never have put himself in that position to hit him late.
Exactly.
As for the bloke that kicked it and where it was taken, the bloke that kicked it 100% wrong call. It should have been Gibbons. And from where it was
would
taken
have slotted
from,
it anyway. So he would have slotted it. So it doesn't matter. But the one thing that again the Americans probably can't understand a lot with the Aussie game is that all those decisions are made split decision. Like they have to make those decisions on the fly. There's no, all right, hold on, let's go watch a replay. Let's get this call
So is
right.
there
Let's
no
throw a
replay
challenge
system
for it.
at all?
And only for goals. So
Only
there's
for
only
goals.
replay for goals, and that's still
Dodgy. That's yeah.
like it's not as clear footage. It's like it's contentious. It's not not the greatest. But
Yeah.
for all other calls during a game, like those umpires make those decisions, and they can confer with each other at stages. They can go, oh no, I saw it this way, I saw it that way, whatever. But there's no like a coach can't throw a flag and say, no, I want to challenge that call.
Yeah.
I want to, it's so the rules are very, like Ed Dog said, when a game is tight, the whistle can get put away. They just sort of let things go, and fans will be screaming, "That's a free kick! He's holding the ball, whatever." And
They don't care.
they sort of let it go. But like you said, in a first quarter of a game, if that would get paid, and it would, then it should always be paid.
100%. Yeah. I believe that too. I could see kind of where I guess the strategy comes from, or like the thought process behind the whole kind of more just let them play kind of thing. But at the same time, it's almost unfair to the team that's up, at least, especially. And then also that's just a devastating loss for Freo right there too.
Yeah,
It's great for Carlton because they're up at number 9 right now, but Fremantle.
And the thing is, they'll pinpoint that because that was happened in the last seconds of the game. So they'll go and they'll replay that over and over where it should have happened, whatever. But you could run back through the whole game and there'd be 100 missed calls. There'd be calls made the other way that ended up in goals that probably shouldn't have been made. So if you're gonna break down one call, then break them all down and go through the whole game then and see, well, how many ended in goals the other way that shouldn't have been paid.
Sorry, it's almost like kind of little slippery slope. Where does it end at that point? Like how far do we go with that? And so it is a little tricky with that. Also, let's talk about something that isn't as controversial, something that is a little more just, I guess, cut and dry. But the dirty plays of Tom Lynch recently in the last couple of rounds, there's been a lot of people talking out on this on Twitter and the such. And then, so, what do you guys think about this? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any discipline handed out to him yet. But
I think he copped $1,000 fine. I think all it was.
Fine, yeah.
And that no games or anything like that. And Australians are like footy players aren't paid as much as like athletes here in the U.S. So is $1,000? Can you give me is $1,000 a lot, or is it more of like
not for him?
For what he's on now.
No. So it's
he's on just over $1 million a year.
Oh, so it's hardly a scratch.
Yeah, it's but we have an agreement where if you're somebody who goes hard at the footy and you play the game hard, then you're gonna get away with doing not cheap shots, but like if you play the game hard, that's fine. But this behind the play, like Tom Lynch is not known as a hard player. He's not somebody that's busting through packs and taking big marks, and he's not a Barry Hall who, if you go back and watch some of his footage, you'll see how many times he got suspended for some of the things he did during games. But it's like, don't pretend to be hard. Don't by giving, because the guy can't react to you. The guy, all he's trying to do is bait the guy. He's giving these little jabs, these little sneaky things, and you can see him set. Like you could almost read his lips going, "Go on, do something. Right. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" Like, because as soon as the other guy reacts,
then that gets
it's gonna get him a free kick, and he's gonna get a shot on goal.
It was a dog act. There's no ifs or buts about that. It was. What the issue is with it though is was it a week or 2 weeks ago when he belted the Brisbane bloke behind the ball, Brisbane bloke on the ground, gave him a belt. He got a fine for that and got away. He should have been suspended for that. And then he goes out and all game there'd be niggling all game. So I guarantee all game the Gold Coast players giving him little cheap ones to the ribs and the back, just let him know that he's there. But to turn around and literally belt a bloke, and they've said how many times have they said they're going to try and stamp that out, Rifty?
Oh,
Like,
every week.
and
Is
one
that
of
the
the biggest,
AFL saying they're trying to stamp
yeah,
that out?
yeah, and one of the biggest issues the AFL has is that they judge things on the injury that's happened. So, if the Gold Coast player had gone down and actually got injured, he would have got a week or two. Like when Essendon played Carlton, Merritt, nothing in it. Literally just swing of the arm, copped. Was it Jack Silvani he copped?
Yeah.
I,
Yep, he
I think so.
copped Jack Silvani.
Yeah.
He it was a very very soft hit, but he just got him in the right spot. And
Ran the
Merritt gets
breadbasket. Like I just
yeah
pulled up the little gif of it again, and then it's just running across. Dude sticks his arm out, just catches him right in the gut, and just easily.
yeah
It's flagrant. Like there's no
yeah
hiding that.
yeah. But because he didn't get injured, and because and another issue that the AFL have is if you're a big name player, you get a lot of leeway. If that's a bloke that's in his third or fourth game of footy,
Yeah.
he gets a week. It's there's for example an issue with the example of that is the tackles. Sean Burgoyne probably should have been rubbed out twice this year for a dangerous tackle, but because he is a superstar, it sort of gets pushed aside where they make an example of that Melbourne player and that Melbourne bloke gets 4 weeks for a tackle that was probably a little bit more dangerous, but because he's a no-name player, he gets weeks for it.
That's hard.
And they even like the Burgoyne one was in the first game back, well, the first round back, and so he made this tackle, was a dangerous tackle, should have been a suspension, but they've said, oh well, actually in the rules it's not written that way, so we'll now change the rule. So after that tackle, they changed the rule, the writing of the rule, so it makes it clearer. So he didn't get suspended, and then he's done a similar tackle after that fact, and he still hasn't been suspended. But again, like in NFL and other sports, it's clear. Like if you target a player's head, or if you do these things, right? Like especially in college, right? Ejected, bang, you're out of the game.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole episode. I can go on and rant about targeting, but I'll save it.
But it's clear. Like if you lead with your head to another, especially to an unprotected quarterback or whatever it may be. If you lead with your head, if you lead with your head and make contact to their head, you're going to get ejected.
Yeah,
it's clear. It's not like oh well, he hit him a bit softer this time than the last guy he did it. The guy who hit him harder will eject him, but the guy that hit him a bit softer, we won't, because he's only a cornerback where the other guy's a linebacker. Like, it's and that's sort of what happens in Aussie rules. It's like a smaller guy could make a similar strike or whatever, and he's not knocking the guy out. But then Barry Hall makes the same punch, and the guy's KO'd, so he then gets 5 weeks for it. And that's where we're like, it shouldn't be the outcome of what happens. It should be the intent behind what you're doing.
100%.
If you're going to punch a guy, like you can't punch in Aussie rules. You cannot punch people. That's against the rules. So whether you punch him to the chin or to the chest, you've still struck him, and you're not supposed to do that. And just because it didn't land flush, he didn't get knocked out, they don't get suspended.
Yeah. And when they've got a grading system of what's like intentional, the way they grade it is just shocking as well. But yeah, as I said earlier, they want to stamp that out the game. Easiest way to stamp that out the game is actually suspend blokes and punish them for missing games.
So it's
and
the
especially
rule
in a
system.
shortened season. Yeah.
So it's the rules and like kind of like the way they're written out and worded that kind of, I guess, bring the most trouble to rulings like this in terms of punishments to be handed out.
Yeah. So they've got, like, for example, they've got like high impact, medium impact, low impact, reckless, careless, intentional. So that's how they grade the tribunal system off that. So you might see one thing one week and you sit there and go, yep, that's intentional, and that's like high impact.
Yeah.
But then they sit there and go, oh, it's careless. It's like, well, what is careless? It's either intentional or it's not. It's careless, low impact, so he's going to get a fine. It's like, well, it shouldn't matter the impact, or there's ones that you say, you literally said the bloke intentional about the bloke, but it's reckless. It's like, well, what's reckless? It's either accident or on purpose, one of the two. It's not in between. It's either low impact or high impact. Shouldn't matter. There's a medium impact, and you can sit there and literally have 3 or 4 identical situations on your screen, and they'll be graded different all 4 times.
I really hate the gray area. It's the gray area that is just not good. So like I know the NFL is trying to, in other sports organizations have been trying to lessen the gray area to, I guess, as best as possible, because isn't that the golden question of how do we actually make this clear? So is the AFL trying to make strides of maybe changing rules up a little more kind of refining them, or are they just
They
content?
they
I'd
try
like to
to,
say
and they
they
make
are.
it worse.
Yeah.
they I've like out of all the sports that I follow, I've never known a league that will change rules week to week. And that's the issue. Another issue with the umpiring with Aussie rules, and it's nothing against the umpires. It's the fact that it's, um, like, what's the word I'm looking for here, Rifty? Um,
Interpretation.
Interpretation. Yeah, it comes down to the umpire's interpretation of the rule of
Mm-hmm.
what's happened. So, a deliberate out of bounds, it's depending on what the umpire sees, what the umpire feels. Like the umpire could sit there and go, "I reckon you hit that out of bounds, so I'm paying that."
Mm-hmm.
Where in most sports, like a face mask in NFL, you grab the face mask, it's a face mask. There's
Yeah.
no two ways about that. Where
Well, there is some
yeah,
There's a little of that, but
there
ninety
should be
percent
no
of the
two
time,
ways.
90% of the time,
But
I get your
like,
point.
they had it in the back rule. So it used to be if you put hands in the back at all, flush, it's a free kick.
Uh-huh.
And now they've changed it to, you can put your hands there, but you can't push. So it comes down to now an umpire has to judge if a player is pushing or a player is actually, acting on the contact. So
That doesn't sound easy.
exactly
No.
right. So it went from, as a full forward, it went from you just put your forearm out, you hold your forearm against them, and that way there's no two ways about it. Where now you can actually hold your ground by putting your hands in their back. So all a defender needs to do, anybody needs to do, is feel the hands in their back and sort of move forward,
Yeah.
and the umpire can interpret that as a push. So it's,
That's hard.
and I do feel like the umpires get crucified a hell of a lot. And I do feel sorry for them because when you've, the league are changing interpretation of rules on the fly week in, week out, it makes it hard. And I swear to God, half the umpires actually don't fully know the rules because no one does.
Not even the people who make the rules know the rules.
Yeah.
Like if you go back and watch some of the clips of the 80s and 90s and how like there's full forwards that kicked 100 goals a year, and every second kick they would have got would now be a free kick against them because they held their ground with their hands fully in the back, and then there might be a slight push off, but because those defenders back then were all they were worried about was trying to stop that mark, so they're still fighting to the end. They're trying to push their back and they're trying to fight for position and then get that punch on. But the full forwards, the good ones, the Tony Lockett's, the Jason Dunstals, they did that little push, they took the mark.
So
When
footy,
nowadays,
yeah.
nowadays the defenders they go, well, if I feel that contact and I'll take a little resistance so that they have to do a little push, but then as soon as that push comes, I'll just dive to the ground,
Uh-huh.
and then 9 out of 10 times the umpire goes free kick, push in the back. So it's
No, so that's almost kind of like flopping. So does I know the NHL, the National Hockey League, has a penalty of embellishment. So like if you try to flop or whatever and it's flagrant or they catch it, you get penalized for that. Is there something along the lines of in the AFL, or is it more like the NBA in soccer where most times you don't get penalized for flopping?
You'll get penalised. So this is another one where they come in and say, we want to stamp it out the game, and then it will happen. It will go to after the game, and the AFL will go, nah, it's fine. And it's just another one. I think it was Papley the other week, took a massive dive and didn't get fined or anything like that. And it's like,
well, the thing is they've brought in fines, so they'll after the fact they'll go, all right, this guy did stage, he faked it, he'll get fined, instead of bringing in, say, like a free kick against. So like if an umpire, and there's times in games where guys have sort of embellished it and the umpire goes, no, mate, you threw yourself on the ground, play on. And they're, because they're calling for a free kick my way, I was pushed in the back, whatever, they go, nah, play on. Where if they said, nah, blow the whistle, it's a free kick the other way against you because you faked it, then it's a lot more of a harsh punishment. It's a punishment that's then on the spot, it's done, it's dealt with, where they'll go back and they'll analyze it. Oh, did he really get enough contact to actually fall that far? No, he didn't. Okay, now it's a $500 fine, it's $1,000 fine. But again, like we said, the fines, the players go, oh well, who cares? I got away with it. I got a goal out of it. that helped my team win. So
Yeah.
what does it matter?
If I'm making their money and I get a goal and it only costs me $1,000, okay,
Yeah.
works. Especially if you win. Especially if you win. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
nine times out of 10, the club pays the fine anyway.
of course. Why wouldn't that? And that was the whole time. That was really weird to me. But then also, shout out to there's a Twitter account that's been adaming all this stuff, which has been a pleasure. West Coast Eagles fan, or like the handle the Brad, love that man. But then also he was telling me something like there's almost like unwritten rules or kind of the way that players take punishments into their own hands, especially when you have players like this. So are we going to be seeing kind of players from opposing teams take their shots on him when possible or play a little rougher around him? Or are they almost like, I guess, worried about a counter penalty if they try to take actions into their own hands?
Yes, a lot of it, like back in the day, there was certain guys that played a certain way. Like there was a known guy, Stephen Baker, who was known for he was a dirty sort of player. He played on the best players, but it was sort of known when you played against him, and he knew himself, I'm going to cop it. I'm going to get guys hitting me left, right, and center because that's what he does. But nowadays, it's a lot harder to get away with. You're not, like you look at just Tom Lynch's stuff. It's how many different angles they had.
Before you go any further, Rifty, so Stephen Baker, this bloke was told off by his St Kilda teammates because he would sharpen his stops. He would literally sit there and grind his stops down to the point where he could literally stand on their toes.
So his cleats.
So his cleats, yeah. He'd sit there and shave them down so they were nice and sharp, so he could, stand on his opponent's toes and sort of rake him wherever he could. To the point where I think it was Nick Revolt and a few other St Kilda players like, mate, please don't do that again.
That's insane.
And I think it was him and Stevie Johnson one game, Rifty, that got about 10 weeks each for literally belting the crap out of each other.
Yeah. Like. And it was just the way he played and like he made his career doing that. Like if he didn't play that way, he wouldn't have had anywhere near the career he had. But I guess it'd be like a goon in ice hockey that goes on to take out the best player. That's sort of what his role was.
Yeah, almost like NFL guys, older school players like Brian Bosworth, Bill Romanowski. Say what you want about them, they're pretty controversial figures, to say the least, but I guess in comparison, they just they have their own hard smash mouth style, and then if it's almost like if you don't want to deal with it, don't come close to me, kind of thing. But the whole sharpening the cleats, that's I've never heard someone that's I guess you could say a little extra, maybe going a step too far with that one.
That was how footy was played back then. That was only 10 years ago.
Jeez.
Let alone 20, 30 years ago, where it was literally just you watch highlights from back in the 80s and the 90s, and it was just any way you get an advantage, you would.
Yeah.
Well, one of the great classic grand finals is the '89 grand final with Hawthorn and Geelong, and where Dermot Brereton gets absolutely cleaned up right at the start of the game and was like done for the rest of the game. Like he didn't know where he was most of the time. Like he was, and that was a direct thing. Like it was like, he's one of their best players. We've got to take him out. So that's what they did. A guy just first bounce ran through and cleaned him up. And
so hockey.
Yeah.
It's crazy that like footy is no different in the fact that like all these other sports like football, hockey, over time, like, going back 20, 30 years, it was a completely different game, but now it's like, in terms of physicality, now that's kind of going away, whether it be from punishment or just from the way that the game is played now. And so, footy's no different than the sports we have here in the States.
Yeah, and they're also going a similar path to, like, especially NFL, where there's guys, like, if you're not a supreme athlete nowadays, you're not making an NFL team. No. You're not making an AFL team. Like, where there's guys that were just hard workers, gritty, grindy, defensive linemen and stuff that could get the job done, but they weren't, you wouldn't consider them supreme athletes. Where nowadays, like, you look at Aaron Donald, who, like, the dude is an absolute specimen of a man.
Literal freak. Unhuman.
Like, and and that's sort of the mold they want. They want guys that look like him playing on the line. They want, linebackers that are all 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds, jacked as, that are quick and can play the pass and play the run. Whereas before there was guys that, were linebackers that were 250 pounds that just smashed through the line and stop run plays. That's all they had to do was just smash through the line. And AFL is the same, where guys are getting drafted on their athletic ability and not so much their football ability. Like, they might not be the smartest footballers, but they are the better athletes. And so you're seeing this big shift in the way the game's played. You get guys that aren't technically as skilled as others that are making it because they just look like better athletes. And that's, it's sort of changed the game a bit. There's guys that probably aren't getting the chances that should, because they don't look like the athlete that others do.
That's very. I mean, you might like this in terms of like one of the few people. So like back in the olden days, if you were not only big in like you could play the role, but if you're like a super athlete too, then you were pretty much untouchable. Yeah, Rifty, you might like this because shout out to a guy that immediately comes to mind when you think of players like that is my favorite player of all time, arguably one of the greatest players of all time, is the legend Larry Allen. Because we all know you showed that your little Cowboys hat before we started the show, and so you might appreciate that. But Larry Allen, specimen, did not look like it, but I'm sure you've seen the highlight of him chasing down that cornerback after the interception.
Yeah,
Stupid. How is a dude that big running that fast?
Yeah, well, and you see some of the offensive linemen and stuff these days doing their time trials, and it's like they're running under 5-second 40s. You're like, what the hell? These guys are like almost 300 pounds. Like, how are they doing that?
It's scary.
Yeah, and you see guys that are in their 40s still playing that because they have that supreme technique. They have, and they don't look like athletes whatsoever. Like, he's on Hard Knocks at the moment for the Rams, I think. I can't remember his name, but he's one of those guys, like, he looks like he should be out cooking a barbecue for his kids, in the suburbs somewhere. And like, I think he's 38 years old. He's been in the league for 20 plus years, and he's playing against an Aaron Donald. You're like, these guys should not be on the same field together. Right. Like, if you put them in a UFC cage to fight each other, you'd be like this is the biggest mismatch of the century. And but they're guys that are going to go head to head at one's going to try and stop you from getting to the quarterback, and because he is such a good player, he knows the systems, he knows how to do it. He'll know all those dirty little tricks to stop the guys. He keeps going.
It's ridiculous. I guess like with a lot of these Australian football players, I wouldn't see them really as like athletes. Like, one of like the athletes that don't look like athletes or hockey players. Like, if you see them just walk around, especially the goalies without all their pads and stuff on, I would not pick them to be an athlete. Like, some of these footy players are like lanky, kind of skinny, don't have like big arms and chest and stuff like that. Not even the biggest legs, but you see them on the pitch, they're just phenomenal. So it's kind of funny with those sports kind of share that similarity. That's what I've been trying to do, like taking on this game, is try to see with the sports I'm familiar with, see like what I could connect to what. And that's been one of the things that really stands out to me, is just the look of some of these players. Like, I mean, no offense to them, because way better athlete than I'll ever be again. But this is weird sometimes.
You mentioned at the start that when you first came across Aussie rules, you thought it was sort of an Aussie version of rugby.
Sorry to everyone listening.
No, it's fine. Like, rugby's a big sport in Australia as well, and in many parts of Australia, it's the only sport they consider. Yeah. So, especially league, as they would call it, they don't actually call it rugby in those places; they call it league. And you see the difference in those guys, and like a lot of it, like, you could stand an Aussie rules player next to a rugby player, and straight away, yeah, that's the guy that plays rugby. Like, there's something about the way they're built that just like
they have no neck.
Yep.
Yes, no neck.
Rugby players are scary.
But then there's other guys that you see playing rugby, and you think he could probably play Aussie rules. There's that more sort of leaner, athletic guys. They probably play the more, Billy Slater type halfback role. But It's in parts of Australia, you say football, or they will think you're talking about rugby league. Um, so, as Victorians, we're very biased towards our Aussie game. But yeah,
Understandably, that's kind of it's only the home and where the origin of Australian football came from. So no big deal. It's not like there's big ties to the sport at all in your region.
don't go saying that too loudly in other places though, because they don't like to credit Victoria with too much of that stuff. So
Even though it was called the Victorian Football League.
yeah, because there was other leagues as
Yeah,
well
so
in other states. So
they like to
yes.
take their claim to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when Melbourne teams are winning it all the time, the other states will be calling it, oh, it's just the bloody VFL. They always get preferential treatment, like so.
That's great.
Especially those teams over in Perth, they don't like it.
Damn Perth, right? Then one of the final things I want to talk about the recent stuff. So the Sockets are set to play their number 9 draft pick on Saturday. So in your guys' opinion, what can we really predict, or what can we expect that's going to, like what we can see on the field from Liam Henry?
Well, they've obviously got big raps from the kid. The fact that he's picked number 9 last year as an academy player, and they've already re-signed him to up his contract. So they've obviously got big rap. I think normally when you come into the system, you're on a 2-year contract. I think during the week or last week they had already announced that he signed a 2-year extension to keep him at the club till end of 2023. So
they really like him then. Damn.
Yeah, I was got big raps on the kid. One of the things in being in Melbourne is that we don't really see much of the interstate team. So we'll know about recruits going on here, but for example, Liam Henry, you might not hear much about. So when you gave me the agenda, we were a bit like, oh, we better go look up on this kid and see what we can find out about him. And I don't know about you, Rifty, but I watched a fair few highlights, and he looks good on both sides of his body. He looked like he can hit, kick right and left fairly good. Quick feet, nice little side steps he's got, a bit of pace. As an Aborigine, a lot of them boys have pace, and I think he's definitely going to fill the void of the Hill brothers and the other small forwards that they've lost over the course of the last handful of years.
Yeah, he's definitely got some pace about him and good skills, and I don't know if it's unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of the Indigenous players that are coming through, they straight away get compared to a Cyril Rioli, who was superstar for the Hawks. So straight away, there's always those comparisons when you're a smaller Indigenous player. I don't think he's quite the Cyril type of player. I think he may end up probably more of a halfback flanker, winger type player, and like you said, fill the void of sort of Hill and a couple others that they've lost. But yeah, he looks to be exciting.
He's also coming off a knee injury, so I think from a couple of weeks ago he hadn't played a game of footy in 11 months. So he's worked. It's hard enough to work your butt off to get to AFL standards as it is, but when you're coming off could you imagine me coming back from my Achilles injury to play AFL, Rifty?
Oh yeah, the Achilles injury. Damn.
Yeah, done my Achilles last year, and so that
How
was
long
hard
did that
enough.
take you? A year?
Yeah, well, I done that in round 2 last year, and I would have been good to go about round 5 this year. So I'm going to be missing 2 years worth of footy, unfortunately, with our season being cancelled. But he definitely looks the part, and as Rifty said about they get automatically compared to your Siriolis and stuff like that. It's not even the Indigenous kids; it's any young kid in the AFL. They are expected to come in and be superstars straight away, and the media build-up can a lot of the times hinder their growth because they come in and the media are going, this kid should be a star right now. And it might take like Christian Petrarca from Melbourne. He went in as a number 2 draft pick and the media have written him off. They're like, nah, he's not a number 2 draft pick worthy. 4 years later, he's now destroying the competition because he's actually built, kids take time to grow.
Yeah.
So I think he's definitely going to be a star, I feel. There's a little bit I've found out doing a bit of research. He has his own bloody tyre company. Yeah. He makes Indigenous tyres. Him and a few blokes he went to high school with started, apparently like he's right into his art, as a lot of Indigenous men and women are, and apparently he makes the Indigenous tyres, and it's called Tied to Culture. was a little
very
tidbit
nice.
that
That's
I
a
found when I
very
was
good
searching.
name. I have a lot of respect. So just to clear things up real quick, because I know there's some kind of lingo differences between Aussies and Americans.
Okay.
So by tie, do you mean actually like necktie or
A necktie.
Okay,
Yep, a
so that
necktie.
does mean the same thing. Cool.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, a necktie. So yeah, I was trying to look for highlights of him, and yeah, that popped up, and I was a bit like,
That's super
I'm
cool.
gonna jot that down and bring that up because that's
That's
something that I didn't know.
I think like on the lingo, that's one thing like I've been trying to get into. If you learn the lingo of the sport, it's one thing, but then also trying to learn the lingo of the commentators and stuff like that, and Australians themselves, because like especially just one my favorite example is the word pissed. It means two totally different things between us in the States and you guys down
think-
under, because like for us it's just mean like
Effectively-
I'm mad, right? But
Yeah, well, effectively, I think piss has about 5 meanings down here. You've got get on the piss, so get on the beers.
okay,
You've got obviously take a piss, so go to the toilet.
uh-huh.
I'm pissed, so you're angry. You're taking the piss, so you're joking, aren't you? That can't
Yeah.
be true. And I feel like there's another one. I feel like we've literally got 4 or 5.
Pissed off. I'm
Pissed off,
yeah.
yeah. So you're angry.
So I'm angry. Yeah.
Now, is
Yeah.
that you guys with like a lot? I've kind of noticed like you guys have a lot of meanings for the same word.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's all just based on context and kind of the way you're saying
Context,
it.
yeah.
It's
Yep.
like
We've as I said, we've spoke to clubs from 26 different countries, and when we started doing it, we're like, oh, okay, our Australian language and lingo could be a barrier at places. And we were
Yeah.
chatting to clubs in France, and they were understanding our lingo. The hardest the hardest country we've actually dealt with Australian lingo getting lost is the American clubs, because we'll sit there and speak how we speak and use our language out thinking about it, and they'll sort of look at us like, I don't understand the question, and it's like, or we'll be with somebody
Yeah.
that's Australian and someone that's American, and the American will be like, I don't get this, and the Australian will go, oh, this is what they mean by that.
I love it. Well, it's because it's so stupid. It's like we're literally both speaking English. It's
Yeah.
the same language, but it's just totally different in some ways. I love
well,
it.
We're speaking Australian.
Straight.
Yeah.
Sorry, so we don't speak English. You guys speak Australian. We speak American. It's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
English.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the Queen's English.
Yeah.
That's the bastard child. Oh, I mean, that was in the original English. Nah, the best one. That's like that takes a backseat between our Englishes. Ours are way
Yeah.
more important.
But so you're talking about Liam Henry making his debut,
Mm-hmm.
and there's another Indigenous boy making his debut. You got to mention the
Okay.
Moz
Oh, the Moz.
for the Bombers. So he's looks like the excitement machine, and there's big raps on the Moz making his debut this week. So we'd have to mention the Moz
Of
when
course,
you're
okay.
talking about
Thank you.
debuts, and he's playing his first game for the club in Dreamtime, up in the top end. Like, is there any better way to make your debut as an Indigenous kid playing
That's
for,
awesome.
That's, yeah,
like,
I'm looking forward to it.
Best
That's
of
for
luck to
sure,
both
as
of
an
them.
Essendon fan.
And-
With the okay, Rift.
No, I just want to say, to understand what some of these kids have to do to actually make it to the AFL is something that can't be overlooked. Like Liam Henry, he has to go to a boarding school that's hours away from his family and stuff to even have a chance at making it to the AFL. And it's like we said, we're Victorians. In Victoria, you could go to a nice private school that's got a good pathway to lead to AFL, or you could go play for a local club that's got ties to a TAC Cup team that you could make it. Where some of these kids, they got to move away from the other side of the country, especially these kids that live up in the top end and stuff. It's like literally hours across the country to go play football, just to have a chance at making it. And not all of them make it.
Mhm.
So when one of them does and finally makes his debut, it's an exciting thing for not only him but his whole community. So yeah, I just thought we can't really
course.
overlook that fact.
Of course. And then
And with that, like, it's such a, as you've said, it's a major thing for them to overcome to get here. But one thing that's come to light, involving Indigenous and the Aboriginal community this week, anyway, I've never known about it, is the Aboriginal flag. So there's a campaign going around at the moment, Free the Flag. So it turns out that the Aboriginal flag, so the red, yellow, and black, is actually owned by a clothing company. A clothing company have got the trademark
really,
to the Aboriginal flag. There's apparently the flag was made for the Indigenous people, and the person who actually designed the flag sold it off to this company. So this clothing company, from my understanding, would let the AFL use the flag on the ground, but anything that they want to sell the Aboriginal flag on, they wanted kickback from, as a trademark obviously would. So that's why you would notice that this year in the Indigenous rounds, normally there'd be the Indigenous flag in the centre circle. On the jumpers, they've removed it because they don't think they should be paying for use of a flag
100%.
to support the Indigenous culture. So the Indigenous community have apparently been sort of at war about this for quite some time, saying we shouldn't have to pay for it. And it's good to see that the AFL have decided that, to back the Indigenous community
That's awesome.
and not pay this company money. And hopefully a bit more knowledge about this can solve this issue, because it's unfair that a flag that means so much to, not just the Indigenous community, but the Australian culture is stopped by some greedy pricks with the copyright. And people sit there and go, well, it's the person who designs the flag's right to sell it to where he wants, but at the same time, it's a flag that is, it's a major deal for them communities and them Indigenous people, and it shouldn't be stopped by, as I said, a company sitting there going, nah, you got to give me money.
100%. And then just real quick before we wrap this in a couple minutes, your opinions on this round's Indigenous Guernseys. Like, do you have a favorite one real quick? I just want to say that I love the West Coast Eagles ones. That one is looks good. Also just reminds me of like a bald eagle wearing the American in me with just the kind of wings on it. I love the look of it.
Yeah, they do a
good job with these.
They do a fantastic job. I remember when the Dreamtime the G first started, it was literally just a game. There was no jumpers, and then over the last 3 to 4 years, every club just do a fantastic job with it. I like Essendon's one this year. Admittedly, Essendon and Richmond have a bit of a advantage over other clubs due to the fact that they know what colour jumper they'll be wearing 12 months in advance. But
okay.
I like Carlton. I actually think Carlton's jumper should actually probably be their away jumper full stop. That is an absolute pearler.
The point I want to make with the Indigenous jumpers is all of those jumpers are designed by someone either within the club or somebody tied to the club. So they're not just a design for the sake of a design. There's a story behind them, and so
that actually means something. Which
yeah,
is
there's actually a lot of meaning to it. I'm not across the West Coast Eagles one. I haven't seen all of them, but I didn't mind Carlton's one.
Carlton is nice.
A lot of Carlton faithful don't really like too much white. They like our navy blue. So, but I liked it, and I like that there's stories behind them, and they sort of represent certain tribes and all different things. And when you say the bald eagle, you got the eagles we have in Australia make bald eagles look like pigeons. So,
well, anything in Australia that you guys have make anything look tiny, especially when it comes to spiders and snakes, because you guys are crazy over there. But fellas, I had a great time talking with you guys. It was a blast to talk some more footy, especially with guys that are very, very well cultured and knowledgeable in the game. So just real quick, where can we find all of you? Where can we find your stuff? Where can we reach out to you? Where can we get all the information, whether it be on your footy team or also the Cobracast?
Well, first, the main one is probably our Facebook page, Sandown Cobras Football Netball Club. That's where you can find the Cobracast as well. We've released some video on Facebook, audio on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. So just search the Cobracast with the present VP. We're on Instagram at Sandown Cobras FNC, on Twitter at Sandown Cobras. What else is there, Rifty? We forgot anybody?
We've got a website, www.sandowncobras.fnc.com.au. We've got some new merch coming, so if anyone wants to grab some merch, we'll have a whole new range.
Shout out to SCD, our partner.
Yeah, so we've got beanies going at the moment, but yeah, we're going a whole new range of apparel coming for our club, so we're looking forward to getting our hands on that very soon.
Okay. Very nice. And then here, my turn to plug. So, of course, you can find all this stuff at thefourthalong.com. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere. And then also, likewise, we are hopefully getting some new kind of footy-themed merch coming soon. Just finalizing a couple of designs with that stuff, and you can find all that stuff linked on our website. But Gentlemen, it's been a blast. I hope it's been a great morning for you. It's been a great way to end my evening with me. And I hope we stay in contact and hope everyone jumps on board your stuff. And once again, I really appreciate you guys coming on, reaching out to me, and also shouting me out on your own show. All love across the Pacific.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having us.
Really do appreciate it, mate. Anytime you want to jump on our show, you want us back, mate, let us know and we'll be more than happy to accommodate.
Yes, sir.
And you said before we got on that you're a Giants fan in the AFL.
Yes, sir.
I think we didn't get off here, mate, without having him as a Sandown Cobras member. Would be something to be wrong with us, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, for sure. We've got to sign you up, mate. We'll put together an international members pack, social member pack.
You know what? All right, hey, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's just bring them and the fourth long together because it's one of the best combinations I think we could ever really come up with.
and more importantly, if you ever, once you can travel, if you are traveling over Australia way, we'll mate, hit us up and we'll take you out to a game, to an AFL game at the G, and then you can come down and train with the boys and have a kick around or come watch one of our games, mate, and share a few beers.
Love all the invitations, fellas. That's my favorite thing about the community so far is how inviting at least most of the Aussie fans are. Of course, every fan base has their minority, but what you going to do about that?
Stick away from the Tigers fans and Carlton fans and you'll be right, mate.
All right, that was beautiful.